All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to talk about a feeling that so many of us have, but we might not have a name for it. It's a kind of psychological trap called learned helplessness. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how to get out of that trap and get back in the driver's seat of your own life.
So let me just start with a question for you, and I want you to really think about this for a second. Do you ever feel like you're just going through the motions, like you're operating on some kind of pre-written script, just hitting your marks, but not really feeling connected to what you're doing? If that hits home, you are definitely not alone. The source material for this explainer calls it a quiet sense of resignation, and I think that just nails it. You're doing the things, you're checking the boxes, but you feel like you're just a spectator, watching your own life happen. It's this deep sense of being disconnected that a lot of adults feel.
So, how are we going to unpack all of this? Here's the plan. First, we'll look at the signs. Are you on autopilot? Then we'll get to the heart of it, the learned helplessness trap. After that, we'll talk about the solution, the antidote, which is self-awareness. Then we'll get super practical with small steps that lead to big agency. And finally, we'll zoom out and see why this matters for everyone by talking about breaking the cycle for others. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, are you on autopilot? This is all about recognizing the symptoms, figuring out if the life you're living is based on a script written by someone or something else. Now, what's so wild about these patterns is just how normal they can seem. I mean, take a look. Agreeing to do things you really don't want to just to keep the peace? Check. Defending a system at work or a social rule that you know, deep down, is just draining the life out of you? Been there. Pushing your own needs to the side to avoid an argument. Or, that classic one, quieting that little voice inside, your gut feeling, just so you can fit in. These aren't character flaws, by the way. They are learned behaviors. Which, of course, brings us to the big question. Where does this feeling of powerlessness actually come from? Well, the answer lies in something psychologists call the learned helplessness trap. Okay, so here's the textbook definition. It's what happens when, over and over again, you're put in a bad situation you can't control. After a while, your brain actually learns to believe that nothing you do matters. And here's the real kicker. Eventually, you stop even trying to change things, even when you could. This whole idea was famously demonstrated in some experiments by a psychologist named Martin Seligman. So first, animals were put in a situation with a negative stimulus they couldn't get away from. Then, the scientists changed the setup so an escape route was now available. But guess what happened? The animals, having already learned that trying was pointless, they just sat there and took it. They didn't even try to escape. They had learned to be helpless. And look, it's so important to get this. This isn't just about animals in a lab. Think about our own lives. Think about schools where you're told there's only one right answer, or workplaces with such a rigid structure that your ideas are always shut down, or even just cultural pressures that tell you how you're supposed to live. These are the human versions of that inescapable box. And this kind of conditioning, while it leads to some really specific things. You get low motivation. I mean, why bother if you think it won't work anyway, right? You see reduced persistence, where you give up way more easily. It chips away at your self-efficacy. That's your belief in your own ability to get things done. And it all adds up to this narrowed sense of agency where your world of possibilities just feels like it's shrinking. Okay, I know that all sounds pretty bleak, but here's the good news. There is an incredibly powerful antidote. There's a key that can unlock this cage, and that key is self-awareness. So what exactly is it? Well, self-awareness is basically the skill of hitting the pause button. It's about learning to recognize your own thoughts, your true feelings, what you actually value, and the behavioral ruts you're stuck in. It's being able to finally tell the difference between what's genuinely you and all the noise and pressure you've absorbed from the outside world. This slide just lays it out so clearly, doesn't it? On one side, you've got conditioned compliance. This is when you're driven by fear, by what's expected of you. It's that little voice in your head that says, I should or I have to. But then on the other side, you have authentic preferences. This is you driven by your own values and desires. It's the voice that says, I want or I choose to. Self-awareness is the tool that helps you tune out the first voice and amplify the second. Okay, so knowing the difference is huge. But how do you actually start to make a change? That brings us right here to the practical stuff. How to start taking back your personal authority, one small step at a time. Before we jump into the tools, though, let's just take a second for a little reflection. I want you to really sit with this question. Think way back. Can you pinpoint a time, maybe in school, maybe your first job, when you said yes out loud, but your entire body, your whole heart was screaming no? That moment, that disconnect,
That's a really important clue. So to start this work, you're going to want a toolkit. Here are 5 really powerful strategies from our source. There's mindful self-observation, just noticing your patterns without judging them. Journaling, which is amazing for making your inner monologue visible. Values clarification, so you know what you're actually fighting for. Then this is the big one, small step experiments in autonomy. And finally, getting support from other people, because trying to do this all alone is tough. Now, this is the part I find absolutely fascinating. The science of why this works. You start with something tiny, like say no to a small request that isn't essential. When you do that, you experience a little win, a small hit of control. And that success literally sends a message to your brain that says, hey, that old belief that my effort is futile, maybe that's not true. And that little victory makes it easier to try something just a little bit bigger the next time. You are literally rewiring your brain. But here's the thing. This journey of getting your own agency back, it isn't just about you. It creates this powerful ripple effect. So let's talk about why your personal work here is so important for everyone around you. The source material makes a really powerful point here. Learned helplessness is contagious. Yeah, think about that. When we just go along to get along, when we're passive, we are modeling that behavior for others. We teach it to our kids, we reinforce it with our colleagues, and we normalize it in our friendships, all without saying a single word. So how do we break that cycle? Well, we can actively create environments that support autonomy. For kids, this means encouraging them to make their own choices. It means letting them experience the natural consequences of those choices instead of always saving them. It means actually listening to and respecting their opinions, even if we don't agree. And it means helping them build their own emotional self-awareness. This is how you raise a generation that knows their actions count. And this quote just sums up the whole goal so perfectly. The task isn't to just rebel against everything. The real work is to reclaim discernment. That's the wisdom to tell the difference between the rules and structures that actually help us grow and the ones that are quietly taking away our power. So as we wrap this up, let's leave with one final thought. It's really easy to look for a bad guy here, to think we've been tricked by some system. But the truth is usually a lot more subtle. It's a gradual conditioning, a slow process of getting used to being disempowered that we often participate in without even knowing it. And that brings us to our final slide, and a question for you to take with you. Now that you know all this, what's one small thing you can do? How will you start to shift from just passively complying to consciously, compassionately participating in your own life and in the world around you?